Good morning. Good morning. So today we are going to start a new unit that is about the health risk assessment. Okay, it is one important aspect in environmental risk assessment, health risk assessment. So let us get into the details. Okay, so a human health risk assessment. This is the guidelines given by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Okay, this US EPA is considered as one of the standard references for discussing about the environmental issues. Okay, so this data is taken from their website. This website is considered as an authentic portal. Okay, so for conducting a human health risk assessment, there are different stages in the conduction of human health risk assessment. The different stages include, first one is planning. Okay, how the health risk assessment need to be conducted, a proper planning need to be done. We'll discuss one by one. Second step is hazard identification. What are the potential hazards occurring for the human health? Then dose response relationship. Okay, for each dose what will be the response, then how much is the exposure, assessment of exposure, and last one is risk characterization. These are the different steps in the or different stages in the human health risk assessment. So what are the different stages in human health risk assessment? Planning, hazard identification, dose response, exposure assessment, and risk characterization are the different stages. Okay, so coming to one by one, first one is planning. What is planning? In case of human health risk assessment, it should be starting with a good plan. Okay, so before starting anything, we need to have a proper judgment regarding the purpose, why this is conducted, scope, what is the significance of conducting this, then what are the technical approaches that will be used. So a proper background study regarding the purpose, scope, and technical approaches that are being used in the human health risk assessment is very much important. So these things will be coming into picture in the planning stage. So the risk assessors, to start with, the risk assessors will be asking the following questions. First of all, what is the population that is at risk? Who or what or where is the risk? If there is one particular community which is under risk due to certain activity, what is the demography of that particular community? So the community, here I am referring to the term community, we should be taking in detail regarding the individual. Okay, how many number of individual, what are the characteristics of the individual, then the population as a whole in general, what are the attributes of the population, what are the attributes of general population, then what are the different life stages, because we should understand that when we are speaking about risk, vulnerability is one important term in risk, or one important attribute of risk is vulnerability, right? There is a hazard, there is a pathway by which this hazard will be reaching the receptor population, and how vulnerable is the receptor population in facing this hazard. If the vulnerability is more, risk will be more. For example, let us consider the current situation. In the current situation, we are facing globally, we are facing this pandemic of COVID-19, right? So at this pandemic stage, we refer to a vulnerable population, right? We say that children or old age people or pregnant women or lactating mothers should not be having much exposure to the crowd. Similarly, in any case of any health risk assessment, we should be considering the life stages like children, then teenagers, pregnant or nursing women, etc., old age people, etc. Then population subgroups, we are considering the population as a whole. This population can be considered as different subgroups in the sense, those people who are highly susceptible. For example, people who are suffering from asthma or genetics, some genetical disorders and all, they will be showing higher chances of or higher vulnerability, or they will be highly susceptible. And also those people who are highly exposed. This classification of people based on exposure can be done based on the geographic area, what is the area where they are residing, and due to certain features, due to certain topographical or geographical features, that area will be subjected to more exposure. Similarly, another classification can be based on gender, then racial or ethnic group or economic status. Okay, so first of all, in the planning phase, you have to consider who or what or where is the risk occurring. You have to consider the individual, you have to consider the general population, then the life stage of population like children, teenagers, pregnant or nursing women, etc., and also highly susceptible population and highly exposed population. Actually, when we are discussing about a health risk assessment, this is highly significant in the present scenario, and you can relate, while we are discussing this, you can relate it very easily because we are already facing a health risk, right? For the last 14-15 months, we are facing a health risk situation. So you know what is the disaster mitigation methods done by the different administrative authorities. So they are classifying the population based on age group, they are classifying the population based on geographical location, they are imposing restrictions for a vulnerable population, they are imposing restriction to minimize or reduce the hazard, right? So this thing becomes very much important in the present scenario. Now, what is the next question that the risk assessor need to put forward? First question was who, what, or where is the risk. Second question is what is the environmental hazard of concern. The environmental hazards or environmental risk may be due to different reasons, right? It may be due to physical reasons. For example, dust nuisance or heat nuisance. It may be due to chemicals. Chemicals may be coming from single or multiple sources. It may be due to radiation. It may be biological or microbiological, what we are facing now. What is the environmental hazard of concern in COVID-19 situation? It is a virus known as the SARS-CoV, right? So similarly, physical, chemical, radiation, biological or microbiological, then nutritional. In some cases, health hazard will be, the vulnerable population will be children where they are facing a lot of nutrient deficiency, right? So in such a case, nutrition is the environmental hazard of concern. Then socio-economic reasons. These are the different, these are the different environmental hazards of concerns. Now, next question is, where do these environmental hazards come from? We have spoken about the different environmental hazards. From where this environmental hazards will be coming into picture? First point is point sources. Point sources means if there is a smoke discharge from a factory, if there is a water discharge from a factory, that is all point sources. Next one is non-point sources. Non-point sources means exhaust from automobiles, then agricultural runoff. These are different examples of non-point sources. Third one is natural sources. So these environmental hazards will be coming from point sources, non-point sources, and natural sources. Now, next one is how does the exposure occur? What are the reasons or what are the different ways in which this exposure will be occurring? So I told that there is a hazard. There are three components when we are speaking about risk. The three components are, first one is hazard. Second one is pathway. Pathway means the hazard originated at one particular source will be posing serious problem to a receptor population who is living at some other location, right? So what is the transmission medium through which there is a chance of risk occurring to the receptor population which is living at some different place, right? So the pathways include air, surface water, groundwater, soil, solid waste, food, non-food consumer products, pharmaceuticals. So these are the different pathways, okay? In some cases, for example, if noise is one of the risk causing factor, this noise it will be originated, sorry, smell. If it will be originated at one particular source, and it will be reaching the receptor population through air, right? Similarly, some kind of hazards may be finding its population, finding its receptor population through medium like surface water, groundwater, soil, etc. Next one is routes or related human activities that is leading to exposure. One is ingestion. Ingestion means both food and water, then contact with skin, then inhalation, and non-dietary ingestion. Next one is in case of an environmental hazard, what the body have to do with this environmental hazard, and how this is impacted by factors like age, say, race, sex, genetics, etc. Actually, while discussing about the characteristics, we told that population will be subclassified based on the attributes like age, sex, race, genetics, etc. So how does the environmental hazard act on the body, and how this effect on the body, effect on human health by this environmental factors, how is it influenced by factors like age, sex, race, genetics, etc.? That is the question. So there is one way is the body may be absorbing, the body will be taking up, or body will be absorbing the environmental hazard. Next one is distribute. Once the environmental hazard is entering the human body, okay, the situation is environmental hazard has entered the human body. Does it stay alone in that place, or will it be spreading throughout the body? What is the situation? Next one is metabolism. If an environmental hazard is entering the body, will the body be able to break down the environmental hazard? Next one is excretion. How this environmental hazard which is happening or which is entering into the body will be removed from the body. Okay, so how the body will be getting in association with the environmental hazard. For example, absorption is one reason. By absorption, the body will be taking up the environmental hazard. Once the body has absorbed the environmental hazard, the next question is whether the environmental hazard is distributed throughout the body, or does it stay in one particular place. Next one is metabolism. Once the hazard is entering into the body, is there any process of breaking down or any other action which is done by the body on this particular hazard, or is it kept as such? So is there any metabolism? And last one is how will the body be able to excrete or get rid of the environmental hazard? Okay. Now, different health effects due to this environmental hazards may be cancer, kidney disease, heart disease, liver disease, nerve disease, etc. Now, once the environmental hazard is entering the body, okay, once the environmental hazard is entering the body, what will be the time duration for which the environmental hazard will be causing some toxic effect? The environmental hazard, once it is entering the body, will it be directly causing toxic effect, or only after getting accumulated at one particular dose for one particular time period, then only the toxic effect will start to generate? So the question is how long? And the question is how long, there can be different answers to this question in this context. The answers being acute, within an hour, within a very few hours, once the environmental hazard is getting in association or getting in contact with the human body, within a few hours or within a single day, it will be causing a toxic effect. Second one is subchronic. Subchronic means actually the exposure need to be continuous for certain months or weeks. Okay. And third one is chronic. Chronic means for a significant part of a lifetime or for one entire lifetime, there will be accumulation, so that there is some toxic effect. Next one is intermittent. Now, another thing is timing. Is there any critical timing during a lifetime when the chemical is most toxic? Actually, we have told that the population need to be classified based on their stages of life, like whether they are old age, whether they are children, etc. So the critical effect of such exposure or the effect of such exposure will be critical during certain periods like fetal development period or childhood or during aging, etc. Okay, so these are the different things which we have to discuss regarding the planning. There are different stages, as I have already told. The different stages include planning, hazard identification, dose response, exposure assessment, and risk characterization. Okay, so that is about the planning stage.